Hey, I'm Neil. Welcome to Patriot. This week in the SITREP, I highlight some of the threats from Stephen Hawking's new book called Brief Answers to the Big Questions. Why would the Pentagon be dropping the name Faithful Patriot on Election Day? Was the past election the most important election of our lifetimes? Also a heads up on declining fertility rates, AI lie detectors, sexist AI, an EU Army, ISS computer crash, what's up with the Pentagon and the Persian Gulf, Russia sowing its oats at Trident Juncture and in the Black Sea, and U.S. weapons seized from ISIS in Syria. For my patrons on Patreon, this video was released on November 9th. For as little as 33 cents a day, $10 per month, patrons on Patreon receive additional content and a deeper dive into events you need to be aware of and you may want to prepare for. This week in sustainability, I've been drying Armenian cucumber seeds for saving. Self-sufficiency, the search continues for local and remote work. I'm also trying out a cryptocurrency trading simulator. With any sources of news or information, I highly recommend and I encourage you to do your own research. I will include links below to all sources. Stephen Hawking's new book, The Brief Answers to the Big Questions, came out a couple weeks ago. He warns us about AI and wealthy superhumans. He says AI could be the worst invention of the history of our civilization that brings dangers like powerful autonomous weapons or new ways for the few to oppress the many. As with AI, the ability to edit our DNA holds potential. Hawking says that within the century, we are able to edit intelligence, memory, and the length of life. And that's when things can get really complicated. Hawking calls the people that will do this superhumans, and they are likely to be the world's wealthy elites. Regular old humans won't be able to compete and will probably die out or become unimportant. Honestly, AI is one of my primary concerns with regards to sustainability, self-sufficiency, and preparedness. The prospect of military applications of AI combined with swarms of drones, robots, and autonomous weapons in the hands of China, Russia, Iran, and even the US is not as far off in science fiction as it once was. AI as a slave master and big brother is not a stretch for me to imagine. I can easily see a time in the near future where AI is monitoring our every movement with drones, and because all of our jobs have been automated, it is assigning work to us on a daily basis. On Election Day, the Pentagon decided to drop the use of Faithful Patriot as a name for the border deployment of troops. The troops instead are expected to call the deployment of nearly 8,000 active duty troops along 3 border states by phrases such as, "in support of Customs border protection," the official said. I'm sure it was no coincidence the name was dropped on Election Day, since this was an obvious attempt to rally voters. I would not be surprised if the coverage of the caravans fades into memory now that the elections are over. People, we are being manipulated. You're being fed mass shootings, bombers, and migrant caravans to distract us. Most people can only focus on 1 or 2 things to plan and prepare for, and what we're being force-fed to focus on is by design to manipulate our thoughts, emotions, and distract us. What happened to Russia, China, North Korea, Syria, Yemen, Iran, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, in the 17 years of war in Afghanistan? They're still there, just not hearing about it because they do not want us to focus on it. They want us to focus on something else. Why? What else do they want us to focus on?
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great and honest has spoken.
Wow, we just got through the single most important election of our lifetime. Or wait, was it? What about 2016? What about 2014? From 2012 to 2004, we were growing tired of the "this is the most important election" phrase. Also in 2008, 2004, 2000 and 1996, 1992, 1988, and 1984, 1980 and 1976, 1924, 1888, and 1864. As you can see, "this is the most important election" has been used so many times, and it will be used again. It may or may not be the most important election to you or us, but it is definitely the most important election to them or they at that time.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
From the BBC on November 8th, remarkable decline in fertility rates. A report found fertility rates meant nearly half of the countries were now facing a baby bust, meaning there are insufficient children to maintain their population size. The report author Professor Murray argues, on current trends there will be very few children and lots of people over age 65, and that's very difficult to sustain global society. With migration, countries will face aging and shrinking populations. He thinks workplaces are going to have to change, and even the idea of retiring at 68, the current maximum in the UK, will be unsustainable. Out of the EU on November 1st, the border control system will be in place for 4 border crossing points in Hungary, Latvia, and Greece with countries outside the EU. Passengers will be questioned by AI lie detectors as the EU runs a trial of the technology. The AI will observe if you look a certain direction or if you look down while answering. Facial expressions and movements like being fidgety would be detected by the AI and alert officials. This is an older story that I remember from about a month ago. Can AI be sexist? Amazon showed that it is possible. Another story on my local news, and that story about AI lie detectors in the EU reminded me of this Amazon story. I've been on the receiving end of an AI interview and I refused. Amazon was using AI to screen employment prospects, and because men were the larger number of applicants, the AI considered men more able than women. November 6, President Emmanuel Macron of France has called for a real European army to defend the continent against Russia, China, and even the United States. Russia reports computer bug on International Space Station. On November 7th, the Russian Space Agency announced that one of the International Space Station's computers had malfunctioned. Russian flight controllers planned to reboot it on Thursday. The agency emphasized that the computer problem wouldn't affect the station's crew. Recently, there have been several NASA spacecraft that have suffered glitches or been shut down. On November 5th, ABC was reporting the Pentagon rejects requests for additional military resources in the Persian Gulf. Having spent quite a bit of time in the Persian Gulf, I find it interesting, with increasing tensions with Iran, that the Pentagon would reject a request for additional resources. We need to keep an eye on the Straits of Hormuz, and I would find it very concerning if the resources were not available because they were needed elsewhere for something we don't know about. However, hopefully they have another plan and no additional concern is needed. November 3rd, 2 Russian long-range Tu-142 planes fly over NATO drills. 2 Russian Tu-142 bombers flew unescorted over the U.S. Sixth Fleet flagship, the U.S. Mount Whitney. The U.S. Mount Whitney is coordinating military drills for Trident Juncture. Trident Juncture 2018 is NATO's biggest exercise in recent years. On November 5th, the U.S. Navy was reporting that a U.S. EP-3 was intercepted in the Black Sea. Another visit from our friends from Russia, this time in the Black Sea. A Russian Su-27 conducted high-speed pass directly in front of the EP-3. The intercepting Su-27 made an additional pass, closing with the EP-3 and applying its afterburner while conducting a banking turnaway. On November 1st, the Syrian Arab News Agency reported that Syrian authorities had uncovered yet another U.S. weapons cache left behind by ISIS terrorists. If you like what you see, please tell your friends. If you'd like to support these videos, become a patron on Patreon, or follow me on Patreon, or follow me on Steemit, or subscribe on DTube. Comments, shares, likes, upvotes, responses, and resteems are all always greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and good luck out there.